start small and be profitable, and then you grow from there. I like to say grow at the speed of cash. I think a lot of people, when I start working with them, they do it on both the business and the personal side. The amount of people who make what you think they make is really small. Like if you look on social media and you see people touting all of this stuff, but then you look at the facts, like the amount of people that actually earn $1 million per year, like 0.01% or something like that. So that means that if you're out there in a crowd and you're looking at hundreds of people, like almost none of them make that much. But if you look at percentages on wealth, there's a decent amount of them that are millionaires that are going to be able to retire comfortably. And they did it not because of a huge income. They did it because they had discipline over an extended period of time. The higher income a person makes, and this is not anything against a higher income, but the higher an income a person makes, the more likely they are to go bankrupt.
This is the Reinforce Your Gym podcast with your host, Dustin Vogel. This show is about arming gym owners with the tools, strategies, and lessons they need to take their business to the next level. That way, they can make a greater impact in their community. Now, let's get to work and reinforce your gym.
All right, guys, welcome to another episode of the Reinforce Your Gym podcast. I got a special guest speaker, very timely because of the time of the year that we all have. Usually 3 big goals we're trying to work on. Everyone in the new year wants to get more healthy, they want to get more wealthy, and they want to improve their relationships. And so we're going to be touching on the money one, but there is going to be a little bit of hints of fitness in there because of his background. So my special guest for today is Billy Hofacker. He specializes in helping gym owners and fit pros with all things money. So Billy, welcome to the show. You ready, man?
Dustin, man, when you put us together, it's going to be good. I love your energy. I love what you're doing, and I'm honored to be on the show. And I also just appreciate your your support and just that the value that you place on this topic. I think that's awesome, and I think your audience is blessed for having you lead the charge that way.
Appreciate it, man. Yeah. And so, yeah, I do this show because I selfishly learn myself, but also it's adding value to my listeners, my gym owner community. So I'm trying to be your guys' voice as best as I can. I really thought out some great questions for today that, again, I get hit with. Sometimes I feel prepared and knowledgeable to answer, and sometimes I know I'm outside my lane. I got to call on the experts, and that's why Billy's here. So, Billy, for people who did not hear in the past about your story, if you could kind of just give the summarized version, like what inspired you to get into a very messy topic regarding money, and why are you channeling those energies into gym owners and fit pros?
Yeah, this was what I call the financial awakening. I've had actually multiple of them, but this was the first one. This was going back about 15 years ago. I was living the dream, I thought, married to Melissa, who's now quite soon going to be the mother of my 5 children. And I was doing work that I loved, helping people with their fitness. I've always been passionate about fitness, which you alluded to. And I got a knock on the door. I was getting ready to head to the gym to train clients. By the way, this was before I opened my brick and mortar facilities, which we may or may not get into. I opened the door and I saw this jacked bald dude covered in tattoos standing on my stoop. I looked past him and I saw my brand new white Honda Accord hooked up to his tow truck. Our car was being repossessed and I was confused. I was angry. I was embarrassed. What if my neighbors see this car being towed away? That was our big wake-up call. We discovered that we had $130,000 in non-mortgage debt. We were overwhelmed. It was at that point that we had to make a decision. You asked for the high level, so I'm going to fast forward 5 years from that point. We paid off every single penny of that. And to do that, and I like to be fully transparent, we used almost all of that was from the revenue from my fitness business, my gym business. There were some other little side hustle things that added here and there, and that was huge. So I don't want to minimize that, but well over 90% of that was from the the business. And fast forward another 8 years, and we became completely debt free, totaling to include our house and all. That included a total debt payoff of $500,000. And I like to share that because it illustrates the experience that I had. I know what it's like to have financial stress. Most people don't have quite the amount that I had, but it's all relative. Whatever stress you're going through, and I still have stress over it. I doesn't you never get to a point, I don't think, where money is not an issue at all. But yeah, it changes with time, and the problems change, and the challenges change. And hopefully, it's clear that I'm just super passionate about helping gym owners and fit pros to not just become financially free, but help them to dream bigger, have a greater impact, and use their unique gifts to do what they're called to do. As you know, I've moved away from my gyms now. I live 1,000 miles away in Middle Tennessee, and I'm pursuing another passion, which is helping the gym owners and fit pros with their finances through various offerings.
So I'm just curious, man, because like in our country, a lot of people take the easy way out and they just hit the bankruptcy button, and it's like a reset button. Was that just like not even in your mind, or was that like that doesn't align with my character? Like I know I'm gonna walk through this fire, but I'll be a better person on the other end. Like what was that for you?
Man, it stirs something up inside of me when you ask that, because it's something that a lot of people do decide to do, and I don't necessarily judge them. Everybody's situation is different. I felt that when I laid everything out on paper, I saw our situation, I saw that it wasn't good. I decided in that moment that I was not going to tap out. I was going to change this picture. It's not what I wanted for my life. It's not what my wife signed up for. It's not the vision I had for my future, my family's future, and it was not an option. And before hitting record, you were talking about some topics, and that really reminds me of what you asked me is what are some of the key topics, and it's so sort of fundamental, but I think it gets easily missed. So many people, they don't fully decide. Like, I am going to commit to doing this. I am going to do whatever it takes. I don't care if that means I'm gonna share a car with my wife for a year or 2 years. I don't care if we're not gonna go to restaurants very often, or we're gonna have to skip the family vacation even though people are gonna be disappointed. Anybody's gonna experience major change, especially financial change, or really any change, without making some of those sacrifices. And I mean, I hope that doesn't sound too crazy, because if our biggest problem is I have to share a car for a short period, or I have to skip out on a couple vacations, I mean, come on. If you're not willing to sacrifice those really minor things in the scheme of life, now I can go on plenty of vacations, and I don't regret that. I don't if anything, I'm proud of it. I'm like, "Who cares? So what? Let people think what they want. Let people make jokes about you, or whatever it's gonna happen to you in your circle, it's worth it on the other side when you get to decide, you get to own your life, you get to own your time, and you get to own how you use your gifts."
I love that. I think it just speaks volumes about your character that, again, you grew a lot. Obviously, you learned skill sets, you learned things that are going to serve you. In fact, you even were able to create such a skill set that you could even create it into a business and help other people. And you can't see that when you make that decision or when you're going through it. You can only see it when you look back. That's why they say hindsight's 2020. It's like, oh, that's why I needed to make that decision. Oh, that's why I had to walk through that fire. And I've heard this phrase and I just absolutely love it. It's sometimes the work is not about the work, it's about the growth, right? And so we get so caught up in the doing of the thing, but we're like, what will my character be like on the other side of this? How will I have grown? Is that worth doing these things, right? And so, I
Man.
think, yeah, that's
Yeah, that's actually that's a really big driver for me. Like, when people say, like, "What's your goal?" and all that stuff, I mean, I have goals like everybody else, and we could talk about that. Even financial goals, that's a really good topic as well, if we wanna touch on that, like, what are some good financial goals? I think the biggest goal for me is to grow, and there's just something so powerful about that, and you touched on the fact that I learned a lot, and that would be an encouragement I would give is you are a gym owner, let's say, if you look at something like the E-Myth Revisited, It's super common scenario that you're a good technician and you say, "Hey, I like working with people. I like helping them get in shape, so I'm gonna open a gym." And you quickly find out that the program design is probably the least important thing in your entire business plan, and you have to learn some other skills, and you need to embrace those skills. If you wanna you become financially free, it's not complicated, but you do have to commit to learning a different skill set because the skills that it takes to get somebody in shape are very different than the skills it takes to build wealth.
Uh, well, let's dive into this, man. Let's help these gym owners and fit pros get their financial house in order. So I know, like many things, the place we should start is mindset. So, what are common mistakes that gym owners make around money? And like, how does their thinking cause that mistake to happen? Like just common money mindset issues that you like to tackle or you encounter, if you can touch on that.
Yeah, I think of a couple, and if you wanna kinda go deeper on any of them, we can definitely do that. One that comes to mind is just this limiting belief or stinking thinking or whatever you wanna call it, that they can't do it. Is if you whether you think you can or think you can't, you're wrong. I mean, I am living proof that you can do it, and it's not just me. I mean, there's plenty of, people that I know, including yourself, that have done well, and it's a very common thing you hear, like, "Oh, if you wanna be wealthy, don't get into fitness." I don't know if I would totally agree with that. I mean, I see the argument there, but with that said, there's not a lot of other businesses that can cash flow, for a low investment like a gym. I mean, I started my, multiple facilities on a shoestring budget and developed quite a bit of recurring revenue. Not so many businesses where you can see people multiple times per week, develop those really strong relationships, and really some cases, and I have one client that, I mean, it's crazy. If I calculate the lifetime value, I have been training this guy. Well, I remember when 9/11 happened, and I was training him during that time, and, what was that? 2000, was it 2001? Yeah, I mean, you do that math on lifetime value, I mean, how many businesses are like that where that's possible? And people that have been in the game for a long time, I mean, that's an extreme example, but you look at, a couple years or 5 years, 10 years, and then, we know how expensive it is to gain new clients, so it's great from that standpoint. You can do it, so you have to believe that you can. Another one that jumps out to me is thinking that you need to have certain things, or you need to have the fanciest equipment, or you need to, have the huge facility. I mean, I had small facilities, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with larger facilities, but with that comes more overhead, potentially more headaches, and I think it's good to start small. Start small and be profitable, and then you grow from there. I like to say grow at the speed of cash. And I think a lot of people that, when I start working with them, they do it on both the business and the personal side. So examples on the business side is there's a huge loan, and now every month a lot of their revenue is going toward that loan. I know sometimes, that happens, but just be careful of that. Make sure you really need it. Are there other more creative options that you can employ? Did you really need all of those? I mean, I had one client one time, coaching client, and she was telling me that, listen, I have to buy like 5 treadmills, and it's gonna be like 20,000 bucks, and, I just have to, like, this is part of our program, like, we do, we get them on the treadmill, and so I kinda sat back, and I tried to ask good questions, and ultimately I said, "Let me ask you, like, if you didn't have treadmills, what else could you do to get a similar effect, that you're trying to get?" And, we came up with, like, so many other options, and by the end of that conversation, she felt like she just gained $20,000 because she was like, "Yeah, actually, probably better off without them." So things like that, thinking outside the box. You don't know what you don't know. That's why it's great to get around other people, whether that's a coach or other people that are kind of a little bit further than you. So those are some big mindset issues that I see. Like even for myself, and you actually made the point that when I was going through that, I never thought that I would be doing this as a business. And I'd encourage people to think it's hard because when you're trying to like scrape your way out of a bad situation, that's really all you could think about. And that was the case for me. But once you get a little breathing room, start to look up and think about how much you can accomplish. You can do a lot in 1 year. 1 year, you can do a lot. I mean, and then think about 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. And this is the good and the bad for the people that are willing to embrace it and focus on the growth, focus on the consistency. It is absolutely mind blowing what you can do financially in 10 years. I am 100%. I'll be honest. I have never made a some people like talk to me like, "Oh, I know you make millions of dollars a year," and that's I'll be honest, that's not true. I do not make that much money in personal income. And if you looked at my income versus percentages and averages, it's not anything outrageous. And that's another mistaken belief that you can only become financially successful if you make a certain amount of money. Here's the thing that surprises people. It even surprised me. The amount of people who make what you think they make is really small. Like, if you look on social media and you see people touting all of this stuff, but then you look at the facts, like the amount of people that actually earn $1 million per year. I just heard this. It was, I wanna say, like, 0.01% or something like that. So that means that if you're out there in a crowd and you're looking at hundreds of people, like, almost none of them make that much. But if you look at percentages on wealth, there's a decent amount of them that are millionaires that are gonna be able to retire comfortably, and they did it not because of a huge income, they did it because they had discipline over an extended period of time. And just to prove that point further, I also learned that the higher income a person makes, and this is not anything against a higher income, but the higher an income a person makes, the more likely they are to go bankrupt. Because oftentimes the huge incomes, like if they make, $5 million a year, whatever it's a million, 5 million, the higher it goes, it multiplies over and over and over the likelihood of bankruptcy because they just make more foolish decisions. They take bigger risks, and yeah. So I think those are some common misconceptions when it comes to the mindset around it.
There's probably a little ego tied in there, right? You feel unstoppable. You got this giant amount of money, and it's just like I can't do anything wrong. And then into, but those are all great mindsets. It's interesting, right? That like coaches and gym owners can absolutely like figure out a way to pay for equipment, but you tell them to put it in marketing, you tell them to store a little bit of weight. No, there's not enough to go around. 20,000 equipment, no problem. Stroke the check. And that's almost like a gym owner emotional buy, like checking out for a piece of gum on your way out. Like, hey guys, make a plan. When you draw your equipment you want to buy and the price tag, and then draw a line and just like, how is this going to lead to revenue? And almost every time there is no like answer to that, right?
Yeah. Dude, can I add something there?
Sure.
And I would almost challenge the listeners on this, and I would love for you to take this challenge. I'm talking to you. If you think I'm talking to you, I am. I don't care if you email Dustin, email me, tag us on social media. But one of the best things you can do, it's something that I would say most people listening are not gonna do. However, if you do this and you look back one day, your future self is gonna be super thankful, is that you prioritize each dollar that comes through your hands. And I'll just share a personal example. I'm not saying any of this to brag, but I I give. I give 10% to my local church, right? I do that on every dollar that comes in. So what I'm not doing is spending a bunch of money and then saying like, "Oh, how much do I have to give?" So what that means is I by the nature of that, I have to sacrifice because that's literally 10% that I don't have to spend. I don't know if I've ever shared that before, but it's appropriate here. So let's say, for example, in my case, the next thing that I do with the next dollar or everything after that is I invest. So I'm doing that before. So we're talking on the personal side, right? But it's the same thing with the business. Now, what else do I have to do? I have to eat next. I'm probably gonna feed my kids. So I'm going to give, invest, and then make sure we eat before I go out to a vacation, before I fix up the house, there's a million other things I could do. But if you would just decide, same thing with the business, you would decide that before you buy that equipment, because it's not as important as the marketing, as potentially the personal development, as potentially business savings, because you're going to want to build up some reserves, not if you're going to need it one day, but it's when you're going to need it one day. And those dollars have to be prioritized because they are never going to just appear. I think if you're willing to commit to that, and if you need help with that, like what's the order? I mean, it's not overly complicated, but there's a lot of truth that it's kind of like, the Profit First talks about. And Warren Buffett has talked about this for many years. You don't spend your money and then invest what's left. You invest your money and spend what's left. So a lot of it just has to do with mindset and what you're deciding to do. Like when my wife and I are making decisions, we're like, oh, should we do this or should we do that? One of the options is never, okay, well, let's stop giving and let's stop investing so that we can do this other thing. That's not even like neither of us have ever even came close to saying that, because once you start doing that, it's a very slippery slope. So you have to make those like personal sort of convictions or values that you're just going to live by. Like I don't. Here's another one, and this is huge. You could look at The Millionaire Next Door, all the books that research money and wealth, is that people who are successful financially do not finance their lifestyle. So if you are somebody who is borrowing money to go on vacation, borrowing money to buy jewelry, borrowing money to even buy a car, I mean, depending on the car, on what kind of car and all that kind of stuff. But in general, if you don't have the cash to pay for those things, it's going to be next to impossible to develop wealth, because now the average credit card rate is 20% or higher. Now you're gonna be paying that for who knows how long, and that's gonna make it really difficult to get ahead.
So let's put some money in their pockets, man. Like you gave a great actionable tip. What are 2 or 3 things a gym owner could do now to start stacking cash and kind of get themselves out from being leveraged by credit card companies, by loans, by all the things that they feel like they're kind of having on their shoulders? What are some
So
things they
are we
can
ta
implement?
so are we talking personal, business, or both? Because the answers are kind of the same, but there would just be
Sure.
slight nuances.
Well, let's say they personally want to take home
Yep,
more, and they
yep,
want to draw more from the business, but there has to be obviously the money there for them to pull from. So, like, yeah, let's go for personal income.
yep. So for personal income, keep in mind, depending on your scenario, because I work with all types of people. Some of them have other income sources, whether that's from another stream or a partner or whatever it is. So I'm always going to want to look at the whole picture. I would start there, looking at your entire picture. On the personal side, and it's hard to just choose one because they are so interrelated, right? Because you're like, for me, for example, every dollar that I make comes from my business. So to me, there's no separation in the sense of like, how do I do this personally? It's going to be impacted by the business and what I do. That's the other thing too. It's the same way in reverse. What the business gets very affected. I think a lot of people don't give this as much attention as it needs. The business is very affected by what you do personally. So if you are spending like I don't know if it's still appropriate to say this, but spending like a drunken sailor on the personal side, then the business is going to be starving for cash because it's going to require more. So you're going to definitely want to look at both. So that's what I like to do, is look at, on the personal side, what is the I say something as the bare bones budget. Like, what's the minimum amount that you need to cover your necessities? So that would be things like your food, your housing payment, your automobile payments, your insurance payments, your clothing, perhaps. You're looking at those things and how much do I need to make? And then when you look over here at the business, you'll want to make sure, we just talked about how to prioritize those dollars. I mean, it sounds like so obvious when I say this, right? But so few people do this. By the very nature of what I just said, let's just say we do those numbers, and I'm just completely making this up because I don't know where you live. You might be in a low cost, high cost area. But let's say we do this and the number comes out to be 5K, right? You're like, okay, with my rent payment and my food and whatever else, I need $5,000. Really, by definition, that's the first $5,000 you need to put on your business budget, because you are essentially saying that I am unable to cover the basic needs that I have in my life. And how long is that going to last? You in living in a situation where you literally don't have enough money to survive. If that's the case, that's a very kind of high alert scenario. So we have to decide to make some changes. And there's lots of different levers. We might, depending on the person's scenario, again, it just really there's so many factors, but it might be, how else can I get more income on the personal side? Like maybe I need to do something else in the meantime. I mean, you can't be above any of that. You have to do, like I said before, whatever it takes. But I have people that they come to me and they're not making enough on the personal side to cover their basic expenses, but then look at the business side and there might be a decent amount of revenue, but they're paying for things out in the business that don't really matter. And so there's an opportunity cost with every dollar. And the big mistake with gym businesses or any business is that they put all of their eggs in the gym basket. And that works out in a small amount of cases, but I'm a huge proponent in building something outside of the gym. So for that reason, you're gonna wanna look at, what do I need personally, and that is going to inform what you do in the business. If you're for example, if you're doing this exercise and you see, "Okay, I need $5,000," and yeah, I hear what Billy's saying, it all sounds good, but when I look at my rent and look at these other things, I don't have it. So now it's like, okay, what can we do? We have to start driving the revenue quickly to cover that. Maybe there's ways to reduce the rent expense so that there's more margin. Maybe there's a way to do a sublease, or I mean, there's lots of different ideas and ways you can get creative, but it really comes down to getting that clarity first. I believe that most people make financial decisions that aren't serving them, mostly because they lack clarity. They kind of know, they think they kinda know, but when you talk to them, they really don't know. They really don't know, how is this decision going to affect my business? How is this going to affect my personal? So with all that said, another thing we're gonna wanna do is look at future projections. So I love to do cash flow forecasts and budgeting so we can see, when I make these changes, how is that going to affect the future of the business? How much cash am I gonna have in the business? How am I gonna invest in? And, just what's the quote? Like, "A hope and a prayer is not a strategy," or something like that, and that's what most people do. Like, Dustin, you're in this world, so I'm sure you can speak to this, but if you ask the average person, like, what's their biggest thing? They go like, "I need more clients." And that's like a kinda like an answer that sounds good, but if you don't know any of this other stuff and there's no clarity, I don't think more clients is gonna fix it, because I've had clients that have a lot of clients and they're still not in the financial position they need to be in, because they don't have a good level of clarity on their margins, on how that's affecting their personal goals, and those are all things that, yes, you want more clients generally in a business, but I think to just throw out everything else and just focus on more clients, I think is a mistake.
Gym owners, let's be real. You don't love lead follow-up, and that's why I started Gym Reinforcement, so you can pass it over to us, because that's probably not why you started a gym. That's not what you love to do in business, is to chase leads down all day long. Well, hey, hand that over to me and my team of remote sales reps. We're gonna text them, call them, email them, social media, DM them. We're gonna do all the channels so that you don't gotta worry about it, and you know they're gonna get reached out to quickly. And that is what we do at Gym Reinforcements. Now, here's the thing. There's a lot of AI and bots and automations out there that can reach out to your leads, but let's be honest, it's not very good, and people could tell right away. You probably would rather to have human to human customer service from start to finish, meaning from when they opt in to when they get serviced by your coaches. We want to have that exist throughout the whole client journey. So let us step in, let us engage your leads, let us sell them for you. And that way you could do what you do best and serve them and get them results. So if you want to book a call, go to gymreinforcements.com and we'll talk soon. Yeah. And yeah, like you said, there's other levers. You can reduce your living expenses. Like, I mean,
That's huge.
you can get it really low if you wanted to. Can you move back in, mom and dad? Can you get out of an apartment or house and rent a room? Like, you can get this thing crazy low if you're willing to swallow your ego and drop those expenses, right? And I'm not going out to eat. I don't need any more clothes. I'm good. Like just like almost make it a game. How crazy low can I get it? And then what I tend to see is that, owners say they want more money, but then you don't see it in the actions and it's not on the calendar, which would be say you want more money, but you won't make dials on Saturday morning. You won't, do appointments. So people tend to gravitate towards the work they love, which for coaches, it tends to be coaching. They're like, I love coaching. I hate all the calling and the selling. But like, if you are in enough pain, and that's why I like that you're having them kind of confront it and get that clarity, when you see that, sometimes it sucks, and that's why people avoid it. It's painful, but then you need that pain to drive you. It's almost like if you do the ostrich head in the sand, you kind of just don't know where money's coming from, and my bills are paid, so I'm just not going to look into it. And because you know that probably deep down there's going to be some pain when you go and look. So then you do, but I find that like turns things into fifth gear. Now you start working harder, and you're almost working afraid, but that is actually good if you can use it as a
Yeah.
fuel. Like I think that's what I see kicks people finally into their next gears. Like, whoa, what
Yeah.
got into you? And it's like, I reviewed my numbers and I wasn't happy. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
glad you did it.
To sort of drive that home, if as you're listening to this, think about, and this is for all of us, like myself and Dustin included, like what rate your actions. Like if you were rating your desires and comparing that to your actions, where do you measure up? Like you're saying you want this, you want to make $100,000. Are you doing the things that the person that makes $100,000 are doing? And where's the gap? And we all know this, but I'll say it again. It's that definition of insanity. If you made $40,000 in 2024 and you say that you want to make $60,000 in 2025, but you don't do anything different, think about how that's going to end up. And that's just a kind of a sobering thought because yeah, like it's like what is it? Like the actions talk, right?
Yes, yes. So let's kind of, I guess, shift into a story, right? Like who do you know that you've worked with, like a gym owner that you can kind of give you, obviously we can protect their identity, the name of their gym, but like a place where they were down low and then you've walked with them and got them up to a better place. And then like, what did you exactly do? If you can kind of set the stage of what was their situation and what did you do to get them out of that?
Yeah, so I think of many people. One kind of good sort of feel good story, super success story, and those are always the best to share because then people are like, that's like too. I can't do that, but you can because this person didn't have any advantage. In fact, he had some disadvantages. He was in a major hole, lots of debt, consumer debt, all the stuff I talked about. Kind of a younger version of myself. So we connected really well. He heard my story. He reached out. We started working together, and I sometimes share the things that he did so that because success leaves clues, and he did a lot of the stuff we're talking about. One of them is that he embraced the process. Like he did not he it wasn't easy. Like there were some emotional moments and really difficult moments, but what he didn't do was because I've had clients, just like we all do. I've had clients that's just too much for them. Like I can't do it. Like, and they, whatever you want to call it, an excuse or whatever it is. It's like, oh, I know that I have to clean up my finances, but I'm just too busy right now. It's like we know what that's really saying, right? But he didn't do that. So he just kind of faced it. And there's this idea that when you face the monster, it gets smaller. And that happened with him 100%. And as far as what we did, we laid out his picture because you have to kind of know where you are before you can go somewhere else. So we laid out where it was, what was the debt, how much was it, all the details of it, and just one step at a time. Our first step we're gonna do is make sure we're, paying you from your gym. At that point, he was relatively new as a gym owner, so now we're trying to, uh, kind of improve both areas, right? But that was also, like, was for me because I had just started my gym right after that story I shared myself. So yes, you can do both, and we just one step at a time. We started with building up some reserves, making sure that he had some margin there. Once we started doing that, he started working on the high interest debt for him to pay those, and that team complete consumer debt free, has some other debt, and in the meantime, He was building his reserves in the business, building up his own income. And the way that we did that was by looking at what he was currently making, what he wanted to make, and then reverse engineered that based on pricing, based on the number of clients, based on the staff he needed to service those new clients. And his business grew dramatically, which does help. And he's getting ready to open up his next facility now. So I think going from somebody who was scared of money, scared to look at his account, scared to look at his P&L, didn't wasn't even doing a P&L, to somebody who's got extreme clarity as a leader in his community, opening up a second facility, well into the six figures in income, and on his path to become extremely wealthy. And he's still a young guy.
Love it. That is great. So hopefully that's an inspiration to everyone listening. Like, you can turn it around. It's never too late. And, you just need a plan and you need to stick to it. Like you said, it's the discipline. That's the hard part. If making a plan is the shortest. It's the now, are you willing to wait the months and the years to execute this plan? Uh,
Yeah. Well, one other difference I like to point out with this particular person is he's like in a lot of ways like a dream client. So when we come to our sessions, he like kind of leads the way. And I always found that really interesting because it just shows the proactive nature. Because a lot of people, when they hire a coach, they expect the coach to do everything for them. But if you could sort of flip that, because I have just like I'm sure Dustin does, I have a bunch of my own coaches, and the best coaches, when I get on with them, they're like, "So what do you want to talk about?" And I'm like, "Man, that's your job." Like, but no, it's not. Their job is to facilitate the growth and support you and help you and give you what
yes.
what you need. But there's this idea that deep down, it's like our clients, right? They know that I think I heard Martin Rooney say this, like they know they should probably eat the apple rather than the chips, but they
Mm.
just need you to support them in their journey. They don't really need you to tell them that, right?
I'm glad that you're hitting that. The right way to do a mentor-mentee relationship is the mentee is actively trying to pull from the mentor and realize that like they don't need you as much as you need them. And so you actually show respect by trying to be, respectful of their time and take what you can with little drips of time that you get with them, right? So I think that again, it's good to hit that. Let's talk about tools. What are softwares? Are you like a software guy that you like, or you like spreadsheets? You hear about Dave Ramsey. He adds friction by making people pay things in cash because the whole world's gone so digital. It's like it's frictionless spending, and like that's where we can get in trouble. So this like pain that I got to go down to the bank, I got to get cash, I got to pay for cash, I got change now. He knows that just by that pain, you're gonna buy less things, and you're not gonna want to spend. And so it's kind of like smart, but at the same time, as the world's going cashless, it's going to be, I think, met with more and more friction from people to actually execute. So, like, what are softwares that you feel like help people get their head wrapped around it or control spending? Or are you like a spreadsheet guy where they have to manually put it in? Like, what are your thoughts
Yeah.
on tools?
Yeah. Yeah, I'll share a few things that I like, and I'll share some other thoughts. I think part of that whole discussion depends on the person, like, as far as, like, the Dave Ramsey stuff, and I think he's, I know a lot of people hate on him, but I think he's really helped a lot of people, and I think there's a lot of value in the stuff he teaches for the right person. Like, it depends on the person and the personality. I think I have friends that they have no problem using their credit card for certain things, especially things that are sort of automated anyway, and they pay it off as they happen. I will put my kind of my line in the sand though. I will say that I don't think anybody, and I might get some flack for this, but I don't think anybody should use credit cards unless they are paying them off immediately. I am not a big fan of doing even 0% interest because what that does is it's kind of like an identity thing. I have a client I'm working with now who's doing so well. The guy is making boatloads of cash from his gym, and I'm telling him, I'm like, "Dude, you are making way too much money to be playing those games." Like, wealthy people don't do that. They don't need to borrow. And he's like, "Yeah, but then I still have the money if I borrow it." I'm like, "Not really, because now they're making payments. You're gonna pay it back anyway." The way wealthy people think, like by and large, is especially if it's a depreciating thing. I'm just gonna if I'm either gonna pay for it or I'm not. Like, I'm not gonna start financing stuff. I'm not gonna start playing those games. I think you get into too much trouble with those. I think certain people are better off not using credit cards at all. Full disclosure, It's been 15 years for me, multiple brick and mortar businesses, multiple business in general, all the stuff that comes with having a bunch of kids and everything else. And I literally don't use credit cards. That's my decision. I do not think that, that has to be the case for everybody. But for me, it's kind of like, should people drink alcohol? And, some people will say you shouldn't because it's wrong, or some people should say, yeah, it's no problem. Some people would say, this is how I would say it, is it depends. Like, if it makes you make really stupid decisions and it's gonna mess up your life, then you probably should stay away from it, right? And, if you're somebody like my buddy who's really wealthy and he uses his credit card but never had an issue with it, like, that's a different scenario. Like, I have trauma from that, and yeah, you could argue, like, I never grew out of that. That's fine, but I think it just depends on the person. But I think there's a lot of value in that, like, atomic habit kind of thing, where if you want to avoid doing something, make it harder, and if you want to do something, make it easier. So examples of that would be, I wanna make sure, if there's any listeners, if you are in your 20s and even early 30s, you have the most, and does not mean that it's not available to everybody, but especially those folks, you have the most powerful tool at your disposal, which is time. That's something that you can never replace. Warren Buffett says the key to building wealth is to start really young or live to be really old. And that's where people make that mistake, and I think it's all about the income. It's 100% not all about the income. It's 100% all about discipline over time. And if you are in your 20s or 30s and you're hearing this, you're like, "I'm not making that much. I'm making $50,000." I wanna tell you, start putting 25 bucks away, consistently. You will not feel that. You will not feel any difference in your life, but it'll make a dramatic difference over time. If you're in your early 20s, do you know that $1 is worth $88 in the future? One freaking dollar is worth $88. Can you imagine that? So now when I'm not telling you never to buy anything, but just think, is this item worth 80, is this, and you could do the multiples, right? What if that means, what is that? A thousand is, 1,000 times 88. What is that? $88,000, right? So is this $1,000 spend worth $88,000? I mean, that's a good question to ask yourself. It just helps you with a little poise before you make decisions you think they don't matter. Automating things, right? But as far as tools, on the business side, I'm a big fan of QuickBooks Online. There's so many great features for reporting. If you are a gym owner, and this is not a personal plug because we do bookkeeping, but if you don't have solid bookkeeping, then you'll want to make sure that's a top priority for you, because there has never been a successful business that I know about that didn't have clarity over their books, and there's a million reasons for that we can go into, but that could be a great action step for somebody, especially as we head into the new year. If you're struggling with your tax situation right now, all of that could be avoided, and you could lower your stress in a big way. When I started doing this whole thing, I started with a pencil and paper, so you do not need anything fancy. I graduated to spreadsheets, so I got super sophisticated, and I use spreadsheets for a lot of my clients. We use them for cash flow forecasts. We use them for budgeting. We use them to track certain KPIs. So I think spreadsheets are great. Some of the CRM type apps have different tools in there, so there's nothing wrong with that. I think the thing you're going to use, the thing you're going to get clear data, the thing you're going to be able to make decisions with, I think are going to be your best tools. I know there's lots of budgeting tools. I just found that the spreadsheet method has worked so well for me that I never switched. And maybe they're better, maybe they're not. But I think, again, it's the thing you're going to use. And I use Empower online. I just have the free account, and that does a good job of just like showing you your full picture. So that's something that you might want to do. The only downside is you have to give it access to all of your stuff. So if you're somebody who doesn't trust that kind of thing, then be careful there. But other than that, like one of the best things you could do is add in personal accountability, whatever that looks like, whether that's digital, whether that's another person, whether that's a coach, whether that's a spouse, some kind of consistent, regular accountability even if you were to simply just have a friend that you talk to every week or every month about, how you're doing with this, what your goals are, just like all the other areas, it will help dramatically.
I love that. So, because we're in a new year, we know people are wanting to improve their health, their wealth, their relationships. What is one thing that you think has like the most impact on somebody? One thing that you'd want like everyone to do that you're like, guys, this is a game changer. If you could just get on board with this, not enough people are doing it. What would that one thing?
Okay. Okay. So the disclaimer is that there are gonna be different scenarios for people. So I am gonna give you my kids make fun of me because I can never just choose one, right? They're like, "Hey, what's one thing?" And I'm like, "Well, let me tell you a few." And I'm gonna do that here because if you are in a relationship, which I know a lot of listeners probably are, I think that arguably this has been the number one game changer for me, is that my journey started like 16 years ago. And I had a friend do this the other day because I shared this. And so for 16 years, I have never missed a monthly meeting with my wife about our finances. And then we started at certain periods of our journey, we did more than one a month. So at one point we were doing it like every week, and then now we do twice a month. So at a minimum, that's 192 when you do that math. So I've had 192 approximately 1 hour meetings with my wife about our goals, and we've done bigger things like, for the year, like goals for the year, but just on a regular monthly basis. That that has been so transformative. I can't even begin to tell you when you're swimming in the same direction as somebody else. And because I have a lot of people that come to me and they're like, they don't talk to their spouse about their finances, or or even worse, like they're fighting about it. And, there's just no synergy there. It's really difficult to build wealth when you're not on the same page. I mean, it's hard enough when you are, right? So I think prioritizing that, and I get that that probably brings up a lot of stuff for people, and I get that, but my encouragement is to push into that and do whatever it takes. That might mean therapy for some people. It might be hiring a coach, and whatever it takes, I think is worth it. If we're looking outside of that, especially this is my second only one thing, right? If we're looking outside of the relationship part, especially if you are somebody who is sort of in those earlier stages of your finance, which I know a lot of people are, and there's nothing wrong with that because, like you said before, it's all about the journey and the growth anyway. Here I am, like dramatically past where I was financially, but I'll be honest with you, like sometimes I miss those old days. So don't think that, oh, once I get to this point, like, I'm gonna be happy or something like that. It's totally bogus. So what I'll say is, especially if you're in that point where you're trying to, like, get out of debt or build some reserves, like, you're kind of in that earlier stage there, doing and nobody likes this word, we call it a financial freedom plan, but you might have heard of the term budget. Doing a budget where you're looking at exactly what's coming in, and I'm talking about exactly every dollar, what's going out. That was really transformative for us as well because it really made it clear to us. And a lot of people don't do it because they're like, "Oh, I know what I make, I know what I spend." Trust me when I say this, you don't. It's just like your client that tells you, "I don't need to keep track of my nutrition because I know every morning I have this and that." I am somebody who has been a fitness professional for almost 30 years. I have somebody that the amount of workouts I missed, I don't work out on Sundays really, but other than that, I think I could probably, this make me sound like a nut job, but I think I can count on one hand the amount of workouts I've missed outside of Sundays in like 30 years. My point in saying that is, like, I am very serious about my fitness. I make good choices, but there is something that is so powerful about being fully in it, and because there's nowhere to hide. It's like, this is what we're doing. And it's so easy not to do that. Like, I'm telling you, like, I hope that makes sense. The reason I'm sharing about myself is because I'm somebody who knows this as much as anybody. Even with the budgeting, like we for a while got away from budgeting for our groceries. We have like a large family. We were spending, Dustin, and we're not these morons that like have no idea what we're doing. I kid you not. We were spending 500 $500 per month over our budget for way too long. And I'm not somebody who's like, "Oh yeah, let's do it." All that was a result of not tracking. We're just human beings and we tend to kind of veer off course. And it's not intentional and I wasn't trying to be foolish. But I can kick myself when I think about that. Like we might have done that for a year or 2 years, whatever it was. I mean, that's six grand. That could have been a really nice vacation. And I don't even remember like any extra food that we had, right? It did nothing for my happiness, right? So I think those two things. And then if I would say, okay, let's do one more for somebody who's already past those early stages, you still want to do both of those things. So we could stop there, but just for a little bit of extra, I would say, I'll just give a simple one. Make something else automated. So like, let's say you're already investing, like up at 1%, because you could do some really cool math. If you're in your 20s, 30s, 40s, if you up your savings rate by 1%, it reduces the living expenses. I should say it increases the living expenses that you'll be able to pay for when you retire. And it's like one of those things that like a little tiny thing now, 1%, you'll feel no difference. And in the future, it'll make a huge difference. It's a really good deposit you can make.
I love that. Those are very helpful and then very, like you said, they're actionable to where they are in life. And I definitely want to double click on the, having like a end of month financial meeting / P&L review with your spouse, because you might be all up in the business and maybe they're removed, or maybe, yeah, I mean, you guys definitely bring two different money mindsets to the table. One might be comfortable, one might be uncomfortable. And sometimes you just need that, like you were bringing up, an alignment around your spending habits, because there are variable, like you can't eat to the dollar when you dine out every single month. You're kind of just shooting rough numbers. You don't have to the dollar your Amazon, right? It's like fixed expenses can be to the dollar, but there's these variables, and that lets you see, did we go a little bit over on our variables, and let's rein it in a little. And again, yeah, we're emotional when you're out grocery shop. Oh, that sounds good. You just grab a little extra thing. Hey, the kids will eat these snacks, and before you know it, like, you're 500 over. And so
It's exactly it.
it's easy, right? And
Yeah.
so that this is just like a built-in realignment. You take your car into the shop to get it realigned, because if not, it starts veering over into the other lanes, and you got problems. So you need those patterns built in automatically to keep you on track to your goals. And again, I know a lot of gym owners and fit pros listen to this. Usually they got their health house in order. Like you were saying, I never miss a workout. Make this the year you get your financial house in order. Like you're like, this is the year. I'm finally gonna get my head wrapped around these numbers. I'm gonna stop burying my head in the sand. I'm gonna stop ignoring it. And I'm gonna confront it, accept my situation, and then, like Billy, I'm gonna dig my way out of it, or I'm gonna take it to the next level. If you're ready, comfortable, let's go, right? Oh, Billy, thank you. You've shared so much good info. Again, I'm very grateful for you coming on and being so giving with your knowledge. Where could people get in contact with you if they want to find out about what you do, what you offer, those types of things?
Yeah, I would love that. If you're interested in getting in contact, what we would do is just connect everything you share with me, and there's no pressure to share anything. It's all confidential. And all I would do is just listen to you, see what you have going on, and just point you in the right direction, see how I could help. And you can do that by just reaching out on social media. Instagram or Facebook would be fine, or LinkedIn. And it's just Billy Hofacker, super easy to find. And you could always check out my podcast, which is called Your Fitness Money Coach Podcast, or just email me, which you could do through the website, yourfitnessmoneycoach.com.
And we'll have all those things in the show notes if you guys want to, go there to look for it. Billy, thank you, man. Thank you for everything you're doing to help the fitness industry. Again, helping people get their financial house in order. There's not a lot of education around it in our industry. So again, you're doing great things, and I appreciate you and all you do, man.
My pleasure, man. I'm so pumped to get this out there, and there's a lot more. So let's start here and keep growing from there. Thank you so much.
All right, guys. See you next week. Gym owners, I want to officially invite you into my free Facebook group just for you. It's called Fitness Sales Made Simple. And essentially, I'm sharing free resources in there all the time to help you grow your business. Doesn't matter to me if you ever work with gym reinforcements. You can gather all kinds of cool content and tools and resources. We have free webinar trainings, free guides, free lead magnets, free scripts that you can send out to make sales. and it's all in the group. So go ahead and click on the link in the description and you could get inside and get these free tools. See you on the inside.